By now, we all know that no-code platforms are nothing short of amazing because they allow just about everyone, especially people without prior tech background, to build powerful applications without writing code, which can be a blessing for those who are not familiar with software development and programming stacks. However, one limiting factor is that these tools only provide the functionality that is built into them. But most apps aren't so self-contained. They need to interact with other services, other tools, and even other apps. A sure way to overcome such limitations is to use various integration tools that allow you to take the app that you've created in a no-code tool and extend its capabilities. This takes your apps to new heights by allowing them to do a plethora of things that they just couldn't do before. In today's video, we are going to be covering just such tools. Tools that I consider truly indispensable and must absolutely be part of your no-code toolkit. Now, before we get started, as always, all the apps and all the resources I'm going to be showing you in today's video are going to be available from my Patreon page, and you're going to see a link to it in the description below. Now, before I show you some of these tools, let's talk about what these tools do and why they're going to be very, very crucial to the apps that you're going to be building. So here we have an architectural diagram of a typical no-code app, okay? The first thing I want to mention is the UI, and this is obviously the part where the user is interacting with the app. And so we have a bunch of widgets, maybe we have a couple of logic stuff on the front end, and this is basically the windows to the app. This is where the user is seeing various things, they're getting data back, they're interacting, they're typing stuff. Behind that, we have the logical layer, and this is the stuff that does some logic calculations. Essentially, it's trying to figure out what to show to the user based on some of the data, based on the user's input. This essentially is what makes the app an app, okay? If we didn't have the logic, we would simply have a web page. After this, behind the logic, we have our storage layer, our storage backend, our database layer, which are all essentially the same thing. And here's where it gets interesting because unless you're building a very, very, very simple app, and in 99% of the cases, you're going to need some kind of a database layer, some kind of a storage backend. And in some situations, you're going to have a typical database, right? So something like a MySQL, Postgres, maybe a NoSQL database like Firebase, Firestore DB. That is very, very common with FlutterFlow, as well as other no app builders. In some cases, you also might have access to an external service using an API. So you're going to create your API calls. You're going to be accessing some kind of a third-party service that exposes its functionality using an API interface. But in many other situations, right, if you're building an app that's, even a little bit more complex than a typical to-do app, right? If you're building a production-ready app, you're building a serious app, you're building an app that, you're going to be marketing to consumers, you're going to be marketing to businesses alike, there's a very, very good chance that the app that you're going to be building, it needs other services. It needs to have access to other tools, other apps, other services. Just, it needs extra functionality that, you can probably build in FlutterFlow or, any other no-code app builder, but it's going to be very cumbersome. And it's going to be a big hassle to do. So in many, many situations, you're going to be accessing some kind of a third-party service that's going to be bigger than just a database and bigger than just, raw API calls. And in this case, we have an external service, okay, that you're going to be accessing. You might be accessing this external service using an API. You might be accessing it using, a database. It might be connected to a database. And in some advanced cases that I'm going to be talking a little bit later in the video, you might not even have a true database. You might have something called a database wrapper that kind of looks like a database and acts like a database, but really it's a wrapper that essentially forwards the request to a third-party service. And you may be wondering, well, why do I need a database wrapper or something called a database wrapper? Why do I even have a need for it? Well, you're going to learn that and much more as I'm going to be covering these very, very crucial and very, very helpful third-party tools that allow you to do things that you may have not even thought was possible before I showed you these tools. Now, the first tool I want to show you is called Trade.io. And this tool allows you to automate business processes exactly how you want. Now, this is marketing speak, and this is very, very general, but essentially this tool allows you to do a lot of very powerful things, as you're going to see in just a moment. So if we scroll down, you have self-service automation, easy for business technologists. You have infinite possibilities, loop and branch highlighting, point and click data field selection, logic helpers. So a lot of interesting things, a lot of cool stuff. But let's go ahead and log in into this tool so that I can show you exactly what you can do with it. Okay. So here I'm logged in into my free Trade.io account. And the first thing that we're seeing is we have here workflows, projects, services, authentications, and connectors. Now, let's try to create a sample workflow, right? So let's say I click on add workflow and I say from scratch, and I call it, workflow one. I say next. Now, what all of these tools have in common is they work through a trigger action paradigm. And so what this means is that you're going to be creating a workflow, but something needs to trigger that workflow, right? Maybe it's going to be something that the user does in your no-code tool. Maybe it's going to be some kind of a request that you send to this tool, or maybe it's going to be done on schedule. So every hour, every half hour, every week, every month, etc., etc. So here we have various options for this as an internal trigger, right? We have our manual, we have webhook, we have schedule, we have callable, which is very, very cool because you can call a workflow from another workflows, right? So you can chain different workflows, which is very, very powerful. We also have a form. So start your workflow by submitting a web form. You can trigger it when an email is sent. You can do an alert, start your workflow when another workflow fails, right? So when another, here you have a callable, here you have an alert, very cool. So let's say we do a webhook, right? Which is typically one of the most popular ways of how you're going to trigger a workflow from your no-code app, right? You're going to select this webhook, you're going to say create a workflow, and now you're going to see your workflow designer, right? So you have your webhook here, right? So let's say we change it. I call it my webhook. And here I can do the next step, right? So what do I want to do? Well, what's cool about this is you have your service connectors, you have your logic tools, but you also have interesting data manipulation stuff. So you can easily import, export, you can do data manipulation, right? I cannot count how many apps I've used just this last week that asked me for a CSV import, right? CSV imports are all over the place. Well, you have a CSV import here. So instead of building that functionality into your FlutterFlow app, right? You can use a tool such as this one, create a workflow that uses a CSV import, right? So let's say we create a Boolean, and let's say I want like a Boolean condition here. And let's say this is true. I'm going to come here and I'm going to do a CSV import, right? So I'm going to say CSV reader, but we also have different things, right? We have a data mapper, we have a DOM parser, we have JSON reader. This could be useful if you're building some kind of a scraper, right? You're scraping web pages. Very, very common, very, very popular. I've seen comments, people leaving on video. How do I build a scraper? Well, this is one way of doing it. Lots of other ways of doing it. This is just one way. But let's say you want to do a CSV reader, right? Well, you have a CSV reader, but now it's missing inputs, right? So you can give it a file, you can specify a scope, you can do all these things, but typically it's going to come from your webhook, right? But what exactly is the webhook? Well, if you click here and you come here, you have your copy public URL. So if you copy this is going to be the URL that you're going to be triggering this whole workflow here, right? So maybe the user is uploading a file. You're going to take that raw data, trigger this, and pass it as a webhook, right? As a post request to this webhook, or maybe you're going to even pass the file directly, depending on how you do. So instead of kind of doing all this, CSV parsing and manipulation inside of your FlutterFlow app, you can use a third-party tool such as this one that can essentially do all the parsing for you with no issues, right? Because it's going to be very cumbersome and very complicated, and it's going to give you a lot of hassle to do CSV parsing and CSV manipulation or HTML parsing and all of that, you might as well just use a third-party tool that's built with these uses in mind, right? So you can kind of configure your workflow. You can send the result back to your, Postgres database or MySQL database, or even maybe to your Firebase database, right? You can do all that. But the point here is that you're doing a lot of this heavy lifting inside of a third-party tool instead of forcing it to be done via FlutterFlow or doing it inside of FlutterFlow, which is going to be, it's going to be a pain. And FlutterFlow is not designed to do all of this heavy lifting. And so I do not recommend it. It's much better to do it using this tool. And obviously, you have a lot of other options. You can come in here. You have service connectors. You can connect it to an API, helpers and utilities, PDF, et cetera, et cetera. So a lot of very, very interesting things. And I'll give you another kind of life hack is that as you're browsing these connectors, and trust me, we're going to see a ton of connectors in this video, start thinking about ideas for apps, or start thinking about things that you can now do that you couldn't have done before because it wasn't something that might be out of scope to do with your no-code tool, which is totally understandable because they're not designed to do a lot of these things. And obviously, once you're done, once you configure all the inputs, et cetera, you can just enable this workflow and you'll be able to trigger it using this webhook here. Now, the next tool I want to talk about is called RudderStack. And this is a real-time event streaming for customer data, okay? Quickly deploy flexible, powerful customer data pipelines, then send the data to your entire stack without the engineering headache, okay? So 18,000 sites and apps run RudderStack. Our complete tool stack makes it easy to level up your customer data stack, okay? So a lot of marketing speak, a lot of things, but the best way to learn about just what this tool does is by logging in into your free account. And that is what we're going to do right now. Here, I'm logged into my dashboard here. This is the RudderStack dashboard. And on the left-hand side, we have directory, we have connect, we have enhance. So you can do data transformations, models, and you can also monitor that data. So let's say we go into directory. Okay. So here you have your sources and you have your destination. So where is the data coming from, right? This is going to be your source, right? So you have AMP, Android, Google Sheets, HTTP, iOS. You have a webhook source, right? Something that we talked about in the previous overview of the previous tool. We have event streams, right? .NET, Android, all of these other tools. We have Flutter. And what this essentially allows you to do is that you're not only connecting to data, right? You're connecting to apps, right? So let's say you need to connect to a Flutter app. Well, you can do that using in the event stream from Flutter, right? You can do the same thing from a Java app, iOS app, JavaScript, Monday, which is a kind of a project management tool. You can do that as well. Lots and lots of different things, but most importantly, we're not just talking about, just random data. You can connect to an actual app, right? So you have an app, maybe you're working with another developer, another company, and they have a PHP app or a Python app or a Ruby on Rails app. And you can easily connect your stuff to that app and get their data, and as well as send data to them as well. So in this case, this is going to be a source, which means that you're going to be using these apps here as sources, right? React Native here as well, Unity, Shopify, right? So let's say, I don't know, we pick Flutter, right? I'm going to say Flutter 1. I hit continue. And now I have my source here, my Flutter source. I can obviously go back here and I can go to directory and I can have a destination. So what is going to be a destination? Where do we want the data? Where do we want to send the data? We can send it as a webhook, right? Very, very easy. You can send it to an Amazon S3 bucket. You have Mixpanel here. You have warehouse destinations, right? Google Cloud Storage, okay, Postgres, Microsoft SQL Server, right? Snowflake. You have your cloud destinations, right? ActiveCampaign, which is a email marketing tool, right? Et cetera, et cetera. So this allows you to take a lot of these random pieces, random apps, and connect them together, which is very, very powerful. And you can build apps just with the fact that you're connecting different apps that a lot of people didn't even think that you can connect them, right? Because I haven't seen many no-code tool tutorials where people are connecting these apps together. So this could be a business opportunity right there. Now, we're not done yet. If you go into enhance and you go into transformations, you can create a new transformation here, right? You can also create a new library, which is a repeatable way of doing transformations, right? You can create new models, right? You can create a new model here, and that is awesome because not only do you have just a source and a destination, you can actually describe how your data is going to look, right? Is it going to be a table? Is it going to have these fields? And then you can transform that data, right? You can take maybe a bunch of fields here, join them together, create a new field. And what's nice about it is this essentially offloads all the data manipulation, all the data stuff away from the app, right? Remember, we talked about your app here. You have your UI, your logic, you have a database. And if you notice, we don't have any part where we're doing data modeling, data transformation. Yes, some of it is going to be done in the database, but it's going to be a lot better to do it in a tool such as this one, because these tools are made exclusively for this purpose, right? So if you're getting a lot of data, you're working with a lot of data, this is going to be ideal for you. And trust me, you're going to be building any kind of advanced app. You're going to be working with a lot of different data sources, and you're going to need a place to kind of combine that data, to kind of filter that data, to kind of manipulate that data, and you'll be able to do it right here. Now, the next tool I want to talk about is called Whale Sync, and this is a very, very special tool because it allows you to do something that many of the tools don't allow you to do, okay? So here they just say create thousands of Webflow pages like magic. And what essentially Whale Sync allows you to do is it allows you to create a two-way sync between Airtable, Webflow, and Postgres, okay? And that allows you to create programmatic SEO pages, internal tools, and more. And if you scroll down, here they talk about build more tools faster. So you can build internal tools, you can you can do programmatic SEO, you can do no-code apps, and you can do cross-team collaboration. Now, the question is, why am I showing you this tool? Why am I so excited about this tool? And that is because this tool allows you to create a two-way sync of data between different tools. And that is not something you're going to see in many tools, because most of the time you're going to have a one-way sync, right? Maybe you're going to have an app, you're going to have your FlutterFlow app here. It's going to connect to Firebase storage or MySQL. That is a one-way sync. You're essentially, you're doing something inside of your app and it's writing to Firebase, right? Or maybe you're going to have, Firebase connect to something else, which, very, very typical scenario. Maybe something happens in your Firebase, you connect it to something else. That's a one-way sync. This allows you to create a two-way real-time sync, okay? So Airtable, Webflow, and Postgres. Now, granted, you don't have a lot of connectors here, right? If you click on connectors and you scroll down, you will see that you don't have that many connectors, right? So you have Airtable, Bubble, Notion, and Postgres, and Webflow, right? All the other ones, they are, they're highly requested, meaning that they probably plan on building them, but it's not available just yet. But trust me, this is more than enough, because all you have to do is store your data in Airtable and essentially, have your no-code app talk to Airtable. And then from Airtable, once your data is in Airtable, you can have a two-way sync to maybe Webflow or Postgres. And so you can build web pages, you could do other things, depending on what you're trying to do. But as long as you have your data inside of Airtable, you'll be able to have a two-way sync that's going to do something very, very useful. Now, their marketing angle here is obviously creating Webflow pages. And that is something that you can do if you want. You can use it to build websites, right? So you can build a dashboard in FlutterFlow that a user can, talk to, a user can configure and then to input data. And that data can go into Airtable. And once that data is in Airtable, you can use Webflow to create web pages. Okay, that's just one idea. But obviously, there's so many other things that you can do. It's really up to your imagination. The power here is in a two-way sync, which is really, really awesome. And it's also very, very trivial to connect Airtable to FlutterFlow. You can actually connect it using their API interface or you can connect it using a connector in one of the tools that we're talking about in today's video. So all of this is possible, and you can build maybe a website builder in FlutterFlow that generates different websites. Just as a quick, top of the head example here for you guys. Now, the next tool I want to cover is a very, very powerful tool because it allows you to do some very, very interesting things. And this tool is called Hevo. And this tool allows you to leverage data effortlessly. Okay. Hevo is an end-to-end data pipeline platform that enables you to easily pull data from all your sources to the warehouse, run transformations for analytics, and deliver operational intelligence to business tools. Okay, so you scroll down, you can make the switch from data burden to data driven. Okay, so lots of data, and you can do amazing things with that data. That's kind of the takeaway here. And if you scroll down, connect all the dots, choose from a growing library of 150 plus plug and play integrations and 15 plus destinations, right? SaaS apps, databases, data warehouses, and more, right? So lots and lots of integration. It allows you to extract data from anywhere. You can load the data how you need, transform data for analytics, activate data to drive action. Okay, so let's go ahead and log in into my free account so that I can further show you exactly how it works. Okay, all right, so here I am in my dashboard here, and the first thing that it's asking me to do is that it's asking me to create a pipeline. Okay, move your data from any source to destination in near real time. Okay, so here I can click on create a pipeline, and once again I need to select a source and a destination. Okay, so look at all of these source things that we can select, all of these source connectors, right? So you can select Google Analytics, right? Maybe you want to, track events, right? Google Analytics is a analytics software that you can track events on web pages, on apps, other places. You can do Google Ads, right? So maybe something happened with your Google Ads. Maybe you're building a third-party dashboard in FlutterFlow, and you're building it for business customers, right? For B2B, right? Business to business. And it's gonna take their Google Ads data and show some kind of interesting information. Well, you can use Google Ads as the source, right? You can pull the events from your Google Ads, from the customer's Google Ads, and then do something with it, right? Microsoft Ads, Google Sheets, Twitter ads, right? This is awesome for building a third-party dashboard, right? Google Search Console for tracking traffic to websites, right? SEO stuff. We have Stripe here. This is awesome for building maybe some kind of a financial dashboard, right? You want to build a financial dashboard for businesses so that they can connect to that dashboard using their own Stripe account, and you can pull the revenue, the financial data, profit, revenue, other data, and display it in some kind of a configurable format. Very, very powerful. And of course, we have our webhook, right? If all else fails, you can trigger this workflow, this pipeline, using a webhook. But we have so much more, right? Mixpanel, a lot of these business tools, right? Drip, a lot of these amazing tools, and you can build business apps, right? Business apps are guaranteed that it's going to be a lot easier to market and a lot easier to get customers, because businesses, they need these apps to make money, whereas consumers, they typically are more interested in kind of entertainment apps or some other apps that are not directly tied to revenue, to making money. And so this is awesome for building business apps, right? So you have, marketing analytics, you have a bunch of other sources here, free sources, Outbrain, a lot of these interesting sources that I really haven't seen anywhere else. Look at this, TikTok ads, etc., etc. And so let's say you select Google Sheets. You need to add your Google Sheets account. You can do it using a service account as well, or you can do it using a user account. So you can add the account in question. You can select objects. You can configure the destinations, and now you're going to have a pipeline, right? So if you go into models here, this is really awesome because it allows you to transform data in your destination through SQL. Okay, so why is this amazing? Well, the reason it's amazing is because you can transform pre-aggregate data and materialize joins for faster query performance, right? And so this is awesome, and this is something you'll have to do. But the thing here, guys, remember, This is not something that you're going to want to do in your no-code app. Okay. No-code apps are not meant to do, data aggregation and data transformation. They're not designed. They're not built for that purpose. Okay. You want to do it somewhere else. You want to do it on your backend, and then you want to access it using your no-code app. So this is a perfect example. You can create a model, and that way you can you can have multiple views, multiple tables that's going to come in, and then you can have one big table. And so you have different data coming from different sources. You can aggregate it, you can do some transformation, and then you're going to have this end result, right? Maybe a view here or a table that you can access directly from FlutterFlow, right? So trust me, please understand that if you're going to be building any kind of an app and it's going to be, accessing all this data, maybe a business analytics app or something of that sort, or, hundreds and thousands of different other ideas, you want to do your data transformation somewhere else and just access the data directly here. And so you can have a pipeline. Maybe the user is asking for some kind of report, some kind of a custom dashboard, so they can hit the button in FlutterFlow. You're going to execute a workflow, and then you're going to wait for this workflow to come back with your transformed data, with the data already having been manipulated here, and that's going to be available here, and then you can just simply display. So a lot of these complex ideas, complex app ideas, building a custom dashboard, building a custom app, a lot of these things that require you to kind of work with lots and lots of different data sources are going to be nearly impossible or very, very difficult to do with FlutterFlow, whereas you can easily do it with a tool such as Hevel. Now, the next tool I want to talk about is called Make, and it's available at make.com, which is a very, very easy domain to remember. And this tool is formerly known as Integromat, and this is one of my favorite integration tools, simply because of its number of connectors and its flexibility and its ease of use. And I'm sure you have already heard me kind of talk about this tool in some of the previous videos, in some of the different scenarios, and I absolutely love this tool. And I'm not sponsored by this tool. And in fact, I'm not sponsored by any of these tools, but I really, really love this tool because it makes integration very, very easy. And not only that, it makes it fun. It makes it a pleasure to create different integrations. So let's go ahead and log in into my dashboard, and I can show you how you can use this tool for your specific needs. All right, so here we are in my dashboard here. And the first thing you want to take a look at scenarios right here, right? So if you click on scenarios here, you're going to have your various scenarios. Now, what is a scenario? Well, a scenario is a pipeline. A scenario is a workflow. It's all the same thing, just different tools call them by different terms, right? So I can click a new scenario and I can create a new scenario. Now, what's really nice about this is that I can create different kinds of scenarios, right? So I can create a scenario that's triggered automatically, or a scenario that's scheduled, or a scenario that's triggered manually, right? So if you click here, I can pick my trigger here, right? So let's say I want to do something when my data in my Firestore DB changes, right? So the first thing I want to do is I want to type cloud, and you're going to see Google Cloud Firestore, right? This is your Firebase Firestore. You can simply click on this right here, and this thing can watch new documents. It can trigger when a new document is created in a specific collection. And it can also do something more advanced, right? It can watch new documents and triggers when a new document is created with specific criteria across multiple collections and their descendants. And so here I can create a pipeline that essentially is triggered when a new document is added, right? And so by choosing this option here, it opens up a ton of different possibilities, because now I can create a workflow that's based on stuff that's happening in my database. And this is something that I talked about in the beginning, right? This is something that I talked about here. We're kind of creating a database, but it's more of a wrapper on top of a database. So we don't really care about that data being stored in Firestore DB per se. It's more important what happens later, right? Because if I come here and I say, let's say I want to watch new documents, I pick my document here. I already have a connector here. And the next thing I need to do is I need to configure my project, right? I have my connector, I can configure. And then I can come here and I can say, well, I want this to check every day, or I want this to check, at regular intervals, right? Maybe every 60 minutes, okay? And I can say, okay, so every hour, it's going to check my database if there's some new data that has been added, right? Or something new that has happened. And if it did, I can come here and I can create a new module. Let's say I want to update my MySQL data. I can click here. I can configure MySQL. Let's say I have a new data added here. Well, I want to insert a new row. I'm going to click here and I'm going to configure my MySQL. And so now I have a situation where anytime I have new data added to my Firebase Firestore DB, I can automatically add a new collection here, right? I can also send an email. I can come here and I can say, well, I want to do email and I can create a draft, or I can send an email and I can configure it with my Gmail account. And now I can send an email. I can do so many things. There's so many connectors. Plus I have flow control, right? So I can do a repeater. I can have a loop functionality. I can repeat something. I can have an iterator, right? So I can take an array and I can iterate over that array. I have an array aggregator, so I can aggregate all of those items and create an array out of those separate items. I have a router, I have a rollback, I have so many interesting things. I have tools. I can have a basic trigger. I can get a variable, set a variable. Maybe I have a variable here. I want to use it somewhere else. And all of this is super, super easy. This is definitely one of my favorite tools. It may not be the most powerful tool out there. I'm sure some of the tools that we covered in today's video are going to be more powerful than Integromat or Make.com. But this is an amazing tool to get started with. I've been using this tool for several other projects, and it has never let me down. And that is why I kind of talk about this tool from time to time whenever I want to show you some of the ways that you can enhance your apps to make them better and richer. So definitely check out make.com. You can also set up webhooks here very, very easily. So this means that you can easily integrate it with your FlutterFlow app or any other app using some other no-code builder. But apart from webhooks, I really, really like the fact that I can directly integrate it with Cloud Firestore and take action based on different changes as I am interfacing with my database. As I'm working with the data, I can do extra stuff that is not going to be ideal to do in your no-code builder. I'm sure you guys are seeing a pattern by now. Now, the next tool I want to show you is Segment. It's available at segment.com, and Segment collects events from your web and mobile apps and provides a complete data toolkit to every team in your company. Very, very powerful tool. And so if you scroll down, you have complete view of the customer. You scroll down, deliver unified personalized experience, launch with the best stacks. You have connections to Stripe, etc., etc. And you have one API, cleaner code. You have different ways of kind of interfacing with this tool. But the most important thing here is this is the ultimate data pipeline. Together, our products create your ultimate data foundation. So if you have a situation where you have customers that are interfacing with apps, whether it's a mobile app or a web app or data warehouse, such as Snowflake here, you're going to be creating different events, right? Page viewed, the customer did this, user did this, and you can send this to different places. Okay, so let me go ahead and log into my dashboard here so that I can show you how it works. So here we have our segment dashboard here. This is my segment overview, and I can create a source here. I have sources, I have destinations, I have health, catalog, protocols, profiles, engagement metrics, stuff like that. So we can add a source right here. And what kind of source are we creating? Well, we have Twilio, right? SMS push notifications. Maybe you're working with a iOS app in Swift. You have SendGrid email marketing. You can also do cloud, right? You have your cloud stuff here as well. You have server. So HTTP API, perhaps, right? You're going to go to next. You're going to call your source, source one. I know that's original. And then we're going to copy this. And now we have our API write key, right? For changing this data. I'm going to go to next. And now we created the source. Now, what do you want to do? What do you want to do with the data that comes via the source? Well, you need to configure a destination. We're going to click here. And here you have different storage targets, storage destinations. You can send all this data. Snowflake, Redshift, Postgres, all the usual suspects. Facebook pixels as well. You can go into analytics, warehouses, BigQuery, SQL storage, Snowflake, analytics, advertising, et cetera, et cetera. So this allows you essentially to capture different events, things that are happening, and send them to different places. Okay, so you can configure, let's say, Optimizely, which is another very popular tool, or maybe like Postgres. You can come in here, and now you have a connection. You can click on next, and now you need to configure your Postgres database. You got to name your destination, pretty much the exact same thing that we had to do in a lot of these other tools. And once you're done, you can simply click on done, but I'm going to close out for now. And you're going to have your destination here. And this allows you to kind of send this data maybe from your FlutterFlow app and have the data routed to some of these other places. And so if you are interested in building something to do with customers, some kind of a customer dashboard for third parties, right? You can actually create this dashboard and use a tool such as Segment to kind of create analytics for your customers, for your business customers. So this is kind of one way of going about it. Obviously, there's so many other things that you can do with it, but this is one idea that immediately came to mind. Now, the next tool I want to share with you is called Jitsu. And this is the open source Segment alternative, right? Jitsu is a fully scriptable data ingestion engine for modern data teams. Set up a real-time data pipeline in minutes, not days. Okay. So let's go ahead and log in into my dashboard so that I can show you how it works. So here I am inside my dashboard. And the first thing that we need to do is we need to add a destination. So it looks like you don't have any destination set up. Let's create one. So I can add a destination here, right? So I have various destinations, right? Right here, or I can create a free database right inside, right? So I don't need a third-party destination. I can create a free Postgres database with 10,000 row limit. So I can create a database right here. And what I just did is I created my own custom Postgres database, right? So I can click on start. Now, once I create my database, I have ways of accessing it, right? Add Jitsu on client. But in our case, we may want to do server to server, right? We can just access it using an API, right? So I can copy this clipboard. I can say, got it. And now it's listening to events. So I can just say, I want to test it out later. I can hit finish and I can go to my destinations. And here I have a Postgres database that I just created. So if you guys are interested in having a Postgres database, guess what? I just created a free Postgres database instance. I can click on this. I can do transformations here. I have all the access to it. I have my API keys. I have all that. And now I can go into sources and I can say, well, I don't have any sources. What do I want to do? And I have tons and tons of sources that I can use in order to, send this data to my Postgres database, right? Doing some kind of a data transformation. And guess what? I have Airtable, right? I can connect my Airtable to my Postgres. I can connect my Firebase, right? I can click Firebase and I can configure my Firebase here, right? I can go back. I can configure something else here, right? I can also configure Instagram, Mixpanel, MailChimp, anything that I want. Any kind of source, lots of different sources here, and I can send them to my database. Obviously, I can also do some kind of data transformation, things like that. But really, this tool is an open source alternative to Segment. So my best tip to you guys is go to segment.com, kind of learn about this tool, learn the power of this tool, learn kind of what it does, see how it works, learn about it, and then you can go to Jitsu and configure it if you want to have kind of a free open source alternative to what Segment does. Very, very powerful tools. And you can build amazing apps that you really couldn't have built just by using a no-code tool alone. Last but not least, I want to talk about another very, very powerful integration tool. And this tool is called Fivetran. And this is the automated data movement platform, okay, from startups to the Fortune 500. For analytics or operations, Fivetran is the trusted platform that extracts, loads, and transforms the world's data, okay? So here they have a little kind of diagram, kind of what it does. You can kind of learn about it. You have transformation, security, other things here, automation, reliability, and scale. So let's go ahead and log into my dashboard so that I can kind of show you what it does. And so here I am inside of my dashboard. And the first thing I need to do is pick a source. So here I have all the sources. I have Google Analytics again. I have TikTok ad. I can pick databases, right? Postgres, SQL Server, MySQL, Oracle, etc., etc. We have Azure, PostgreSQL database. So all the usual suspects. So we can pick Postgres, let's say. I can go continue. And here I need to pick my destination, right? But if I go on the left-hand side, I have all the connectors here. I can search by name. I can go to transformations. Okay, so another awesome and a very, very powerful thing is the ability to transform your data. Okay, so I can add a new transformation here, and here we have our destination. And so for the destination, I can pick Snowflake, BigQuery. I have all of these other destinations. Maybe I want to send it to MariaDB, which is kind of an open source MySQL alternative here. A lot of people use it. MariaDB, I can just continue setup. And here I need to configure my database as always. So if you're using something like MySQL DB or Postgres, you obviously need to configure it so this tool can connect it and do the proper data transformation and data integration. And so another really, really powerful tool for connecting different services, apps, and/or apps together. And so these are some of the tools that I wanted to show you that I felt you definitely need to know about if you're building any kind of production apps that are going to be working with different data, different services, and even going to be connecting to different apps as well. Pretty much anything that's going to be more complex than your typical to-do app. Chances are you're going to be working with different pieces that you need to kind of combine and get it to work together. And one place where you definitely do not want to be doing data transformation and data manipulation is inside of your no-code tool of choice. If you enjoyed this video and you are interested in taking your no-code knowledge to the next level, maybe you're interested in building one of the app ideas that I talked about in today's video, or maybe you are interested in finally finishing that app or starting that app that you've been putting off for a very, very long time, maybe months, years, or even maybe decades. And you say to yourself, okay, enough is enough. This is going to be the year where I'm going to be building the app that I've always wanted to build. Well, guess what? There's never been a better chance of building the apps of your dreams using sophisticated no-code tools available today. And so if this sounds like you, then you definitely want to check out my Patreon community. When you join my Patreon community, not only will you be able to view and/or clone all the FlutterFlow apps that I've built in previous videos, and also all the apps that I've built in different no-code app builders, but you also get access to extra content such as live streams, Q&As, behind-the-scenes content, and my exclusive masterclass series where we do a deep dive on one of the topic areas where a lot of people are maybe struggling with, or they just need more clarification. And in fact, later this week, we're going to be doing a brand new Q&A. And so this is going to be as good of a time as any to become your member and ask your question inside of a community so that it can be covered in our extensive and comprehensive upcoming Q&A. Plus, when you join our amazing Patreon community, you're going to be supporting this channel and supporting my work, which is highly appreciated. So if you're not yet a member, definitely do consider joining our Patreon community. You're going to see a link to it in the description below. If you guys enjoyed the tools that I talked about in today's video, here's another video with some other amazing tools you definitely must check out.